Hey Spuddies, Potato McWhiskey here, and welcome to my hero tier list for Civilization 6 Gathering Storm New Frontier Pass in the Heroes and Legends mode. Now that we got that mouthful out of the way, let's just jump right into it, starting with the first hero going alphabetically. It is Anansi. Anansi is agile, which means they ignore movement penalties in woods and rainforest terrain. They also have Anansi's tricks, which is when they're located on a bonus or luxury resource, they can consume that resource and generate science and culture based on the era of the game. This is an incredibly powerful hero to get early in the game if you're going to be rushing things like particular wonders or a tech timing push, like maybe you're doing a night rush, things of that nature. Very, very powerful. It is a little bit of a double-edged sword in the sense that Anansi will increase the cost of your districts to build, right? But the other side of that is you're going to unlock the things that make your tile improvements better sooner. So yeah, your things will cost more, but you'll also just have better tiles by using Anansi. And he comes with 6 charges, which is a hell of a lot of science and culture in the early game. If I remember correctly, it's like 60 culture and 50 science you get from him. It can easily pay for, all 6 of those charges can skyrocket you through the classical era, or through into the classical era rather. And not only that, but Anansi is actually a combat unit. He has a ranged attack. It's a 1 ranged attack, so he's kind of like a scout unit, but even so, he's basically a melee unit who can deal damage without taking damage, and doesn't have to expose himself by, when he attacks and kills something, he doesn't have to actually occupy the tile they were in. So for that reason, I think he fits comfortably in like an A tier. He's a very, very strong hero. And you'll notice I've actually truncated the amount of tiers in my tier list. Normally they go all the way down to F, I think it was. But in this particular list, all of these heroes are so good, I don't think anyone is below a C. I think C is maybe a hero that is just a little bit less consistent and hard to make use of, and S is just a hero that's like amazing. Next up, we've got King Arthur. Now, King Arthur is very interesting because he actually transforms your army into better combat units, in particular the Questing Knight. The Questing Knight is a unique heavy cavalry unit that has a limited lifespan. I think they're only around for 12 turns, and their combat strength depends on the era. I think they have a baseline of 34 combat strength in the ancient era, and they get about plus 10 combat strength per era. It depends. Some areas they get plus 12. I think they are plus 10 in the classical, plus 22 in medieval, and then it's plus 10 again, and then 40 in industrial. So they scale up, these Questing Knights, so they're always going to be useful. The important thing to note, though, that combat strength isn't based on the era that you make the Questing Knight. It's based on the era of the unit that you turn into the Questing Knight. So that's something you're going to want to keep in mind. I think if you're using all of the charges on Arthur to convert units over, you could actually leave yourself in a worse position than you'd originally been in. Now, that said, Arthur himself also can fight, and he can be a great way to convert old units that you maybe don't want to upgrade. Like, for example, you have an archer lying around that you don't have the money to upgrade into a crossbow, or you have a swordsman lying around and you don't have the resources to upgrade it into a musketman. You can quickly get a decently powerful upgrade to that unit and kind of run someone over. I will say this, he's probably best used by a civilization like Byzantium, whose heavy cavalry units do full damage to walls. And so for that reason, I think Arthur is actually probably one of the weaker heroes. He's still amazing, which is why he's going into C tier, but he just there's sort of so many drawbacks and caveats to his abilities that it's really hard to justify anything above a C tier. Now, he's no way a D tier, because a D tier hero is just like not great, but he's still really good. Like, think of a C is good, right? But he's just not over and amazing compared to, like, say, for example, Hercules, who we'll get to in a moment. Now, before we get to Hercules, we will talk about Beowulf. Beowulf is, he's actually super powerful. Now, he is rugged, so he ignores movement penalties in hill terrain, which can be quite useful because he does have a base movement of 3. Oh, speaking of which, by the way, Arthur also has a base movement of 5, which is like a big positive. He's really, really good for exploring and, rushing someone. Arthur is great at rushing someone. Beowulf, on the other hand, is this is going to sound weird, but he's actually better on the defense. He's an incredible defensive hero. And that's because if your enemy is coming at you with like high-tech units, Beowulf typically has like a strong enough combat strength that he can still instantly kill them with his unique ability, Beowulf's Challenge, which is basically you can target an adjacent enemy unit with less combat strength than Beowulf, and he will just immediately, instantaneously destroy them. Super amazing on the defense, but this can also be used on the offense. I think it's a little bit less useful on the offense. I think this is definitely more of a turtle hero, but he's still a really, really good offensive unit. The problem I have with Beowulf is that he's kind of like Arthur. He is just strong, right? He's just like a big military presence on the battlefield, and he doesn't really have a way to get you ahead. He's kind of a hero that gives you an advantage, but it's hard to translate into that advantage into anything other than defense or offense, right? And there's the same problem with Arthur. Whereas someone like Anansi, he's a combat unit who can give you a tech boost, which is a way to generate a tech advantage or a culture advantage. And so for that reason, I'm going to put Beowulf into C tier as well. He's not terrible, right? Again, C tier is not bad. It's just not as good as some of the other heroes. I also have a personal bias towards heroes that do economic things, which will become more apparent as we go on. Especially now that we're going to be talking about Hercules, who instantly just jumps up to S tier. Like, this hero is insane what he can do. You can get him like turn 20 into the game. He can immediately construct districts for you. He's also rugged like Beowulf, so he ignores movement penalties in hills terrain. So his 3 movement actually goes a lot further than you would think. He can kind of move around the map very easily. He can clear barbarian encampments for you, generating you gold, which all of these guys can do. To be fair, all of those guys can do that. But Hercules, like Hercules' labor, where he can instantly build a district for 2 charges, is kind of insane, to the point where you want to be recalling Hercules as fast as possible, because instantly building a district is a massive advantage, right? You place down your holy site, and on the same turn that you place it, it's instantly built, and you're earning great people points, and you can start building a shrine. You could also use him to build spaceports, right? The power of Hercules is that he's an economic hero, which means he's useful in both domination and non-domination games. Whereas things like Arthur and Beowulf, they're a little bit only useful in like sort of domination-y kind of games where there's a lot of war happening. His other ability is Hercules' Rage, which you can use when you're located on an enemy district. You destroy all of the buildings present in that district and pillage the district. I don't think this is as useful as his builder ability. However, I could see some uses for it in the late game. Like, for example, if you are, struggling to compete, you could run them around your opponent's territory and just completely smash down all their sides districts to slow them down, or smash down whatever district is causing you a problem. Like, if it's a culture game, you could declare war on someone and kill all their, theater squares, and then they will generate less defensive tourists, so you'll have an easier time with tourists. That's the great thing about Hercules. His abilities are incredibly flexible, and they're economically oriented, so they're useful in any sort of game. Absolutely, I think he's tied for my favorite hero. I would say definitely. Hercules is amazing, and I think he is really the perfect example of what a good hero in the Heroes and Legends mode is. The next hero is Himiko. Himiko is a Japanese hero. She has 4 movement and 8 charges. Her first ability is Inspiring, which gives combat strength to all adjacent units. And I believe the combat strength that she gives scales up over the course of the game. Either that or I'm crazy, because I'm pretty sure I saw her giving like plus 20 combat strength to my units at one point in the game, although I might just be misremembering. But she's basically a great general, right? She's a super powerful great general with a limited lifespan, and she also has the Swift ability. She has 4 movements. She ignores all terrain penalties. Super duper mobile, great general. The downside is she only gives that combat strength to adjacent units, so she kind of applies her benefit to less units, which is a bit of a downside. But she also has Himiko's Charm, which allows her to target any adjacent city-state. She immediately places a free envoy in that city-state, and if you're already suzerain, you also get Faith. This is probably maybe my second favorite economic ability. It kind of depends on there's like maybe third favorite, really. But what I love about this is you can generate crazy early diplomatic favor. You can get suzerainties, giving you those unique benefits from those city states. You can get a ton of faith in the early game, which will allow you to perhaps rebuy Himiko when she dies, or rebuy other heroes. She can also levy the troops of a city-state for no gold cost, and then act as a great general for those troops to go attack someone. So that's what I really like about Himiko, is she's flexible, right? She can act as a military presence in your game, right? Levying a city-state, getting you suzerainty, and levying the city-state's military. Or she can act as an economic presence, right? Getting suzerainty of city-states and making friends with them, getting their unique abilities, building up your diplomatic favor. She's very, very flexible. And for that reason, I'm going to put her up into A tier. But she is actually a civilian unit, like a builder or a settler, if I recall correctly. So she can't actually fight, which is a bit of a downside. So she's actually, I think, the only hero that can't fight. So while she is really strong, she has a significant downside compared to some of the other heroes. And I typically find in my games that I really struggle to get more than 3 heroes in a game, right? In a 6-player game. I think 2 is like a pretty viable thing to be able to get in most of your games. Is you can pretty reliably get 2 heroes, and you should be able to get at least 1 in every game. So I don't think I would like Himiko if she was my only hero, but I definitely really like her as a 2nd or 3rd hero. If I have, say, for example, Hercules and Himiko and Anansi, this is like a great combo, or well, pretty much anyone but Hercules is a great combo. Anyway, next hero is Hippolyta. Hippolyta is rugged, so she also ignores movement penalties in hills terrain. She has 3 movement and no charges, but her unique ability is Hippolyta's favor. She automatically heals 20 health every turn, which makes her great as a frontline sort of spearman attacking into people. She is anti-cavalry, by the way. That is her class. So she's really good at fighting cavalry, a little bit weak to melee units, but that's made up for the fact that she heals. She also has Hippolyta's command, which has no charges. She can just use this every turn. She targets any adjacent friendly unit that has moved or attacked this turn, and she immediately restores the unit's moves and attacks. This is amazingly useful at any stage of the game for any sort of military stuff. I do think she's a little bit of a domination hero, which means she's kind of a little bit less useful than some of these other guys. But her ability is amazing. Like, for example, you can do really cool things, move a bombard into range of the city, and then immediately have it attack the city. Or if you already have a way to move a bombard with, say, a great general, you can actually get a double shot with a bombard, which will allow you... So she's really, really flexible, right? You can double shot with units, which I think is the biggest power of Hippolyta, is that she can be like a big meat wall on your front line, and also have your units be able to dish out extra damage by refreshing their actions. So I think she fits in, even though she's a domination-oriented hero, I feel like she fits into the B tier. And the reason why I'm kind of devaluing domination sort of stuff is domination is already kind of easy, right? All you have to do is get a little bit of a tech advantage, hit the enemy with a timing attack, and you'll more or less win. I feel like domination heroes are a little bit more of a win more kind of button. Next up, we have the Trickster twins, I believe they're called. I can't remember, or there's something the twins. They're something like that. Anyway, they're unique ability is agile. They ignore movement penalties in woods and terrain. They have 3 movement, like most of the other heroes. They also have the twins resurrection. Any ordinary land unit that is killed by the twins is resurrected under your control with full HP and movement. That is super powerful. You can use range units to, whittle down someone and then use these guys to essentially force multiply your army. Extremely powerful domination focused extremely domination focused hero. However, kind of like Beowulf, they're also really good on the defense, because if you can use city shots, whittle down your opponent's units, and then use Hwanapu to finish those off, you can basically generate an army out of thin air, which makes them incredibly powerful. Again, they are kind of domination oriented, which I feel lowers their value a little bit. They're still really good to where I'm gonna put them in A tier, just because their ability is so powerful on the offense and defense. It's kind of like Beowulf's ability, but just better, because instead of deleting a unit, you resurrect it on your side. Next up is Maui, who is a Polynesian hero. He has 3 movement. He has 4 charges for his ability. His first ability is agile. He ignores movement penalties and stuff in woods and rainforest terrain. And he also has Maui's inventions, which is when he uses his ability on an unowned empty plot, he creates a random bonus or luxury resource on the plot. And that comes with 4 charges, like I said. This is probably the weakest economically based sort of hero. He has an amazing potential and he's tons of fun to use, but I would say compared to Hercules, Anansi, and Himiko, who are like the three superpower, I would argue, economically oriented heroes, he kind of feels a little bit weaker. But that said, he's still really damn good, and he's also a fighting unit, so he can run around, make one of your settlement locations better. The problem I have with Maui is that his ability is super useful in the early game, but it falls off really quickly because once you don't have any more cities to settle, because he can only put those resources on unowned land. Once you can't settle any cities, his usefulness kind of expires. So for that reason, I'll put him in B tier. He's still a great hero and amazing if he's one of your 2 to 3 heroes you can get in a game. I think Maui is another one of those heroes that I might be a little bit reticent to get as my first hero. And anyone in the A or S tier, they would maybe be my first pick. I would happily grab Hercules or Anansi or the twins as my first hero. And then as I'm going down, these would be second and third hero picks. And the exception to that is Himiko, who is in A tier, but I would be a little bit hesitant to pick her first. But yeah, Maui, great hero, very, very powerful. It kind of falls off and his ability has it kind of loses utility as the game goes on. But still, I love him, and he's one of my personal favorite heroes, even if I don't think he's that good in comparison to some of the other heroes. Then we have Mulan. Mulan is a fantastic hero. Is unique in that she is a ranged cavalry unit, so she actually has a ranged attack, which is really, really cool. Her first ability is Mulan's Devotion. She gains 1 combat strength every single turn, which means her damage ramps up the longer she's alive before she dies, which is super useful, right? She just continuously does more and more damage. In fact, her damage is so high, she can kind of act like an early game siege unit, which is why I'm going to kind of place her. I'm kind of tempted to place her up into A tier, because my problem with it though is that she's domination oriented, and domination heroes I just don't think are that amazing. So I think she fits comfortably in B tier. She has a very straightforward. She just has a lot of movement and a lot of damage, and she attacks from range, which I think is a little bit more useful compared to Arthur and Beowulf. That's just my personal opinion. Next up we have Oya. Oya is a West African hero. She has 3 movement. She is swift, so she ignores all terrain penalties, which is super useful. She's highly mobile. Her ability is Oya Storm. Oya damages all adjacent enemies and heals all adjacent owned units by 40 health. And she has 6 charges of that ability. This hero is kind of insane. The amount of sustain and damage she can do. My problem is it's a little bit hard to get maximum value from her. But considering she only lives 30 turns, you're going to get value out of her. She's just a really good combat unit. And so she kind of, even though her ability is amazing, I still think she's kind of one of the weaker heroes. So I think she slots comfortably into C tier. Her ability is amazing if you get maximum value from it, all that sort of stuff. But I find domination is a snowball thing. And that's why, someone like Hippolyta, who can help you snowball, is really, really good. Whereas Arthur, Oya, and Beowulf, you can kind of grind people down without these abilities, but Hippolyta can actually speed up your siege of a city significantly by increasing the amount of damage you can do to it. Whereas these guys feel like they're just good at, clearing the field of enemies. And to an extent, Mulan is the same, but she can also shoot cities because she's ranged, which is unique. So that's kind of the justification of the current order. Next up, we have Sinbad. Sinbad, oh my god, this is another S tier hero. He goes straight to S tier. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Sinbad is S tier. He is a naval unit. He's the only naval hero. He is an Arabian hero. He's a naval melee unit, I believe. He has 7 movement on the water, and he can enter ocean tiles from the start of the game. He has 8 charges on his unique ability called Sinbad's Fortune, which allows you to target any adjacent enemy naval unit or barbarian encampment and either do damage to it or clear it if it's a barbarian encampment and generate gold, which is insane. The amount of gold he generates from this, I think the baseline is 300, plus you get the 40 gold from clearing the barb camp. The amount of gold Sinbad can generate you is insane. On any sort of a map with a moderate amount of navy on it. He's probably like a B tier on a Pangea map with no islands, but on anything with even a single island that can spawn a barbarian encampment that he can find and clear, he jumps straight up to S tier. His other thing is he also has Sinbad's Journey, where he earns money every time he discovers a new continent or natural wonder, which again just propels him up to S tier. The thing is, I feel like Sinbad is actually broken. Like, if I'm being totally honest, if there was like a tier above, I would put Sinbad up into it, because the amount of gold he can generate so early into the game is kind of ridiculous. I think I had a game where I played with Sinbad, and I think by the time it was like turn 60 or 70, I had got like, 3,000 gold out of Sinbad or something. Something in that ballpark. It was like 2,500, which is a ridiculous amount of gold to have at turn 60. I was buying settlers, I was buying my buildings, I think I bought a great person, I bought like 3 buildings, and I bought a settler, which is like ridiculous at that stage of the game. Sinbad, easily my second... So the problem I have is Sinbad and Hercules kind of fight for first place. That's like my take. The final hero is Sun Wukong, and this is probably going to be my most controversial opinion. Sun Wukong is a Chinese hero with 6 movement who ignores all terrain and movement penalties. Now that 6 movement is really, really important, because he also has Sun Wukong's disguise, which means he's hidden unless he's adjacent to an enemy unit. So he's kind of like a scout with the final promotion, or a submarine. He's basically a land submarine, right? Which is insane. The only reason submarines aren't the greatest unit in the entire game is because they're on the water. This guy is a land submarine. He's like a land shark. That's why I'm going to put him into S tier. I love this guy. The fact that he has 6 movement means if you can get onto an enemy district that has a building into it, you can pillage it twice. And the pillage value is ridiculous. Like, if you can find a few enemy mines in a city, you can run around and systematically generate infinite amounts of gold using Sun Wukong. And that's even helped along with his third ability, which is that he is immortal. He has a significantly longer lifespan compared to all other heroes. I think the average is usually 30. Sun Wukong lives for 60 turns. There is a little bit of a double-edged sword in that you won't get as much era score from resummoning him. But the fact that he lives so long and can generate so much gold and so many resources, like if you're pillaging campuses, you're getting science. If you're pillaging government plazas and theater squares, you're getting culture. You can get faith from pillaging. I really can't stress how good Sun Wukong is. And I feel like a lot of people don't think he's very good. So that's what I think my most controversial opinion is. And I kind of like that I kind of slotted 3 heroes into each tier, which I think is kind of a neat way to do things. Again, I just want to be really, really clear. The heroes in C tier aren't bad. They're just not as good as the heroes in B tier. And in all honesty, I could probably be convinced that Hippolyta and Mulan could swap with one of these lower heroes and maybe even have Maui jump up a tier, right? These tiers are a little bit flexible. But yeah, that's my take on the tier list for the Heroes and Legends mode. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you disagree with some of my assessments? Do you think I missed something? Have you had an experience where you felt like a hero was S tier and I unfairly rated them as B or C tier? I'd love to hear about that in the comments. But that's it from me. I love you all very, very much. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!